On a frozen night in February 1959, 9 hikers set out on an expedition into the Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia. They were young, strong, and experienced, engineers, athletes, and adventurers. Yet what they left behind was a puzzle that would baffle the world for more than 6 decades. Their tent was found slashed open from the inside. Their belongings, boots, coats, food, were left behind, untouched. Their bodies were scattered across the snow, half-dressed, with injuries that defied explanation. Some showed signs of violent trauma, others were burned or exposed to radiation. This is the Dyatlov Pass Incident, a mystery of ice, fear, and silence, one of the most haunting unsolved cases in modern history. In the winter of 1959, a group of young Soviet students and recent graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute in Sverdlovsk, modern-day Yekaterinburg, prepared for the adventure of a lifetime. The team was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student known for his discipline, skill, and leadership. Alongside him were 8 others: Zinaida Komogorova, energetic and determined; Rustem Slobodin, athletic and cheerful; Lyudmila Dubinina, passionate and strong-willed; Yuri Doroshenko, known for his bravery; Nikolai Thibault Brignol, intelligent and resourceful; Alexander Kolevatov, quiet but dependable; Semyon Zolotaryov, the oldest at 37, a World War II veteran; and Yuri Yudin, who would begin the journey but later turn back due to illness, unwittingly saving his life. These 9 were experienced mountaineers, undertaking what was classified as a Grade 3 hike, the most difficult level, requiring advanced skills and endurance. Their destination was Otterton, a remote mountain whose name in the language of the local Mansi people ominously translates to "don't go there." At the time, the Soviet Union was in the grip of the Cold War. Mountaineering was not only a hobby, but also a matter of national pride. Completing a trek of this difficulty would grant the hikers official certification and recognition. For young Soviets of their generation, it was a mark of honor. On January 23rd, the group boarded a train toward the northern reaches of the Urals. Their journey was documented meticulously. Photographs, journals, and even playful notes have survived, giving us rare glimpses into their personalities and the camaraderie that bound them. In these snapshots, we see laughter, songs, shared meals, and youthful optimism, ordinary moments that now feel haunting, frozen in time before tragedy. After several days of travel by train, truck, and ski, the group reached Vijay, the last inhabited settlement before the wilderness. Here they stocked up on bread and supplies, shared a night together in a local hostel, and made their final preparations. It was in Vijay that Yuri Yudin, suffering from rheumatism and back pain, reluctantly decided to turn back. Though disappointed, the others encouraged him to rest. He would later say it was the hardest decision of his life, one that spared him from the fate that awaited his friends. On January 27, the remaining 9 hikers skied out of Vijay into the snow-covered mountains. Their diaries reflect both determination and joy. Zinaida wrote, "The mood is wonderful. If only we knew what lay ahead." For the next days, they skied through thick forests and frozen rivers. The weather worsened, winds grew harsh, temperatures dropped, and visibility shrank. On February 1st, they set up camp on the slopes of Kolatyakal, known in Mansi folklore as the Mountain of the Dead. Why they chose this exposed, windswept slope rather than descending into the forest for shelter remains a matter of debate. Perhaps they were exhausted and did not want to lose altitude. Perhaps it was Igor's decision, a test of endurance. Whatever the reason, that night they pitched their tent on the barren mountainside. It would be the last night of their lives. February 12, 1959. The hikers were expected to send a telegram back to their sports club in Sverdlovsk, confirming their safe return from the mountains. But no message came. At first, no one worried. Delays in expeditions were common. Perhaps the weather had slowed them down. But as the days passed, concern grew. Family members pressed authorities for answers. And by February 20th, a formal search and rescue mission was launched. What happened next would ignite one of the most chilling mysteries of the 20th century. Volunteers, fellow students, and military units were dispatched to the Ural wilderness. The search was grueling. Temperatures dipped below -30 degrees Celsius, winds howled across the barren ridges, and visibility was poor. On February 26th, rescuers made their first discovery. On the slopes of Kolatsyakal, partially covered by snow, they spotted the hiker's tent. At first glance, it seemed intact, but as they approached, they noticed something strange. The tent was slashed open from the inside. Personal belongings were scattered: boots, clothing, food supplies, maps, journals, all left behind. Yet there were no hikers in sight. 9 pairs of footprints, some barefoot, some in socks, some wearing only one shoe, trailed away from the tent and disappeared into the snow. The search party realized with horror the hikers had fled their shelter in the dead of night into a blizzard without proper clothing. Following the tracks downhill, about 1.5 kilometers from the tent, rescuers came upon the first grim scene. Near the edge of the forest stood the remains of a fire. Beside it were the bodies of Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonashenko. They were shoeless, dressed only in their underwear. The branches of a cedar tree nearby were broken, as if someone had desperately climbed it to escape something, or to look for the tent through the storm. Both men showed signs of hypothermia, but also unexplained burns on their bodies and hands. A short distance away, the body of Igor Dyatlov, the group's leader, was found lying face up in the snow. He was oriented toward the tent, as though trying to crawl back to safety. His fists were clenched, his body frozen in determination. Not far from him, the body of Zinaida Kolmogorova was discovered. She too appeared to have been trying to return to the tent. Her posture suggested struggle, and then the body of Rustam Slobodin was located. He had suffered a fractured skull. Strangely, his injuries were not consistent with a simple fall. Within a week, 5 bodies had been recovered, yet 4 remained missing. For over 2 months, the snow concealed the rest of the hikers. It was not until May, when the spring thaw came, that searchers discovered a ravine further into the forest. Here, under 4 meters of snow, lay the bodies of Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolovatov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, and Semyon Zolotaryov. The condition of their remains deepened the mystery. Thibault-Brignol had a crushed skull, the force likened to that of a car accident. Zolotaryov and Dubinina both had broken ribs, shattered by massive pressure. Dubinina's tongue and parts of her eyes were missing. Some reports claimed her body contained unusual levels of radiation. All 4 were better dressed than the first victims, suggesting they may have scavenged clothing from the others in a desperate attempt to survive. But none of these injuries showed external wounds, as though the trauma had been inflicted by an immense but invisible force. The Soviet investigation began quickly. At first, authorities suggested the hikers had died from exposure. But as the evidence mounted, the case grew stranger. Why would trained mountaineers open their own tent and run barefoot into the snow? What caused the massive internal injuries without outward signs of violence? Why was radiation detected on some of the clothing? And why did the Soviet military suddenly order the case files classified? The official report concluded that the hikers had died due to a compelling natural force. The phrase, vague and unsettling, satisfied no one. The case was closed, sealed in secrecy. But rumors spread quickly. Locals whispered of strange lights in the sky on the night of the tragedy. Others recalled military tests in the area. Some spoke of Mansi legends. The mountain was cursed, they said, and the spirits had taken their revenge. What had begun as a tragedy was now a legend. The theories the Dyatlov Pass Incident has remained unsolved for more than 6 decades. And over that time, countless theories have emerged, each attempting to explain the hikers' mysterious deaths. Some are grounded in science, others in conspiracy, and still others stray into the realm of the supernatural. Let us walk through the most prominent. 1. The avalanche theory. One of the earliest and most official explanations was that an avalanche struck the hikers' tent. Startled in the night, they slashed their way out of the canvas to escape the crushing snow. In their panic, they fled into the storm, only to freeze to death before they could find safety. At first, this seems plausible. The violent injuries some of the hikers suffered could have been caused by heavy snow. But problems arise. The slope they camped on was not steep enough for a typical avalanche. The tent, still partially standing, showed no signs of being buried by tons of snow. The hikers' footprints were visible for hundreds of meters, undisturbed, something unlikely if an avalanche had roared through. For many, the avalanche theory falls short. 2. The katabatic wind infrasound theory. Another natural explanation involves a rare phenomenon known as katabatic winds, powerful, sudden gusts that sweep down mountainsides with deadly force. In 1978, such winds killed hikers in Antarctica. Alternatively, some researchers propose infrasound, a low-frequency vibration caused by wind passing over the mountain. In theory, this could induce feelings of dread, panic, and disorientation. If the hikers were overwhelmed by sudden terror, they may have fled irrationally, only to succumb to the cold. But again, this does not fully explain the massive internal injuries some sustained. 3. Military testing. Perhaps the most enduring suspicion is that the hikers accidentally stumbled into a Soviet military experiment. The Ural Mountains in the 1950s were not far from secret testing grounds. Some believe the hikers witnessed or were caught in the aftermath of parachute mines, aerial explosives that detonate before hitting the ground, producing shock waves strong enough to cause internal injuries without external trauma. Others point to reports of orange fireballs in the sky the night of their deaths. Possibly missile tests. The radiation found on some clothing could lend weight to this theory, and the swift classification of the case files has fueled suspicion that the government knew more than it revealed. But why then would the military allow the bodies to be found at all? Why not erase all evidence? The Mansi tribe theory. Some suggested the hikers were attacked by the Mansi people, indigenous to the Ural region, who considered the mountains sacred. Perhaps the hikers trespassed and paid with their lives, but this theory quickly collapsed. The Mansi were interviewed and even aided in the search. No evidence of human attack was found, no footprints except those of the hikers themselves. 5. Escaped prisoners or KGB agents. Another conspiracy proposes the group crossed paths with escaped prisoners from nearby labor camps, or even hostile KGB operatives. Could they have been silenced for witnessing something forbidden? Yet the absence of outsider tracks once again undermines this theory. 6. Yeti or supernatural forces. Some claim the hikers were victims of something not of this world. The sheer violence of the injuries, the missing tongue, the eerie reports of glowing orbs in the sky. These details have fed speculation about a Yeti attack or even alien interference. Strange? Yes. But to believers, the supernatural fills the gaps where human logic fails. 7. A combination of events. Perhaps the truth lies not in one neat explanation, but in many. A sudden windstorm or infrasound panic could have driven the hikers from their tent. Exhaustion and hypothermia took some. The last survivors, desperate, scavenged clothing. Then perhaps, while seeking shelter in the ravine, a collapse of snow or rock inflicted fatal injuries on the final four. Messy, imperfect. But sometimes tragedies are just that. Disasters born of multiple cruel events colliding. The Dyatlov Pass Incident is more than a mystery. It has become a legend. In Russia, it is a ghost story whispered around campfires. Abroad, it has inspired books, films, documentaries, and endless online debates. Even today, investigators, journalists, and armchair detectives sift through the details, hoping to uncover the truth that eluded Soviet investigators. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the case. Their conclusion? An avalanche. Yet this explanation did little to quiet skeptics. Too many questions remain unanswered. The 9 hikers are remembered not just as victims, but as symbols of human endurance and tragedy. Their memorial still stands in Yekaterinburg, visited by those who honor their memory. The pass itself now bears their leader's name, Dyatlov Pass, and still the mystery lingers. What compelled 9 young explorers to abandon their shelter in the dead of night? What force shattered their bodies without breaking their skin? Why did the Soviet Union bury the truth beneath layers of secrecy? More than 60 years later, we may never know. The mountain keeps its secret, but the story endures, drawing us back again and again to that frozen night in 1959, when 9 hikers walked into the snow and never returned.